good afternoon, pilot teachers, and good afternoon, students.
Good afternoon, Mr.
Thank you. Sit down. Okay, if you can make reference to your booklet, which is a study of a densely populated area in a developing nation on Java, and you would have noted that we are now on page 5 of our work. We have completed looking at mapping generally the Monsoon Asia region. We've completed mapping some of the main islands and features, physical features mainly in Indonesia. We have also looked at the climate of Indonesia by looking at an example of a climograph, which is given on page 4 for Jakarta. And as well as that, we have done some work on looking at the natural vegetation of this particular area. Today, we are going to move on now to looking at Java. And for most on all of the part of what is found in this booklet, it is mainly to do with this particular island in Indonesia, which is Java. So if you can make reference now to page 5, and we are going to go ahead now with the information based on what is in our booklet on Java and other information that I have put together for us to understand a little bit more on what we are doing on this particular case study on Java. Before we come to looking at Java and the physical makeup of Java in terms of landforms, as well as population distribution and farming or agricultural activities on that island, I'd like to sum up the work that we have done generally on Indonesia by looking at the land in Indonesia. And I'm going to go through a set of reading here, of which it contains some geographic background about the country Indonesia in general. If you'd like to make notes or take down notes on the readings, you can do that. Okay, looking at what we have covered now this time on geographic background of this country, Indonesia. Indonesia is the largest archipelago in the world. It consists of 5 main islands and about 30 smaller archipelagos, totaling 13,677 islands and islets, of which about 6,000 are inhabited. The name Indonesia is composed of 2 Greek words, Indos, meaning India, and Nisos, meaning islands. So Indonesia, putting that together, means the Indian islands. The Indonesian archipelago forms a crossroad between 2 oceans, the Pacific and the Indian Oceans, and a bridge between 2 continents, that of Asia and Australia. Because of its strategic position, therefore, Indonesia's culture, social, political, and economic patterns have always been conditioned by its geographic position. Later on, when we look at the reason for why this particular area, Java, is a core zone, then we are going to go back a little bit into history, and we're going to find out that the reason for why this particular area developed is because of its geographical location. It is most central, and when the sailors and traders were actually passing through from Europe and Africa into China, they were coming through this particular area, and Java seemed to be a little bit more suited in terms of where they stopped over before they continued on their movement. And that is maybe one of the reasons in historical times for why this particular island is more developed compared to the other outer islands in Indonesia. But we'll look at that later on when we look at historical Indonesia. The land area of the Republic is 1,919,443 square kilometers, while the sea area is about 4 times larger. The whole territory extends about 3,200 miles from east to west, which is 95 degrees to 141 degrees east longitude, And from north to south, it covers an area from about 6 degrees north to about 11 degrees south in terms of its latitude. When we were doing an activity, you could have recalled, I mentioned that I would like you to plot in the 5 degrees north line of latitude and the 10 degrees south line of latitude. And here it is telling us that this particular country, in terms of whether it feathers to the north or to the south, how far it extends. To the north, it's about 6 degrees, and to the south, it is about 11 degrees. In terms of longitude, it extends from about 95 degrees to 141 degrees east. Indonesia's 5 main islands are, from what we have already done on mapping Indonesia, Sumatra, which is about 180,000 square miles in size. The second one is Java, which is about 51,200 square miles. Java is also the most fertile, and it is also the most densely populated island in Indonesia. The third of the main islands is Kalimantan, or 2/3 of the island of Borneo, measuring about 208,000 square miles. Then we have Sulawesi, which is about 73,150 square miles. And finally, Irian Jaya, measuring about 162,200 square miles, which forms also, that is referring to Irian Jaya, forms part of the second world's largest or biggest island of New Guinea. So New Guinea itself is the world's second largest island. And the island of New Guinea includes both Irian Jaya and Papua New Guinea. The largest island in the world is Greenland. And the second largest island in the world is the island of New Guinea, of which Irian Jaya, being the province or one of the areas of Indonesia, is part of that island. The other islands in Indonesia, they are relatively small in size in comparison to the 5 main islands. So from our work on mapping Indonesia, we would have already identified and being able to locate those 5 main islands. Okay, and that's general information on the whole country of Indonesia in terms of its geographic background. There is more information, but the rest of the information, if we are interested, we can go through the books in the library or other sources to do with Indonesia to be able to find more information on the physical background of the country. Okay, we leave it at that, and this time we move on now to the information from our booklet. And our lesson today is going to be based on Java, looking at, again, the physical makeup of this particular island in Indonesia, Java. And if we do have time, we are going to go ahead to looking at one of the most important activity, and that is the different land uses that takes place in this particular island in Indonesia. Okay, we start off by looking at information from our booklet, and then we'll go to finding out a little bit more about this particular island, Java, in Indonesia. It tells us from our booklet that Java comprises of 60% of the population of Indonesia. Much of the tropical rainforest in Indonesia has been cleared for agriculture and is divided between rice growing and plantation production of sugar, tobacco, and tea. Rice production in Indonesia and also on Java is intensive on the alluvial soils of the northern plain and the fertile basic volcanic soils of the highlands. We have a cross-sectional diagram, and that cross-sectional diagram gives you an idea on generally the landform in or on Java. Okay, let's look at our booklet from the south to the north. The ocean, which is actually found to the south of the island Java, what is the name of that ocean? To the south of the island Java, the Indian Ocean lies to the south of Java, correct. To the north of the island Java, there is no ocean, but rather there is a sea. And the name of that sea is the Java Sea, that we have covered already. So if you look at your cross-section, you should be able to work out the south and the north. The south is more to your left. The north is to your right, according to your information from the booklet. And there you can see the Indian Ocean to the south of that island Java. You will also note that there are coastal plains to the south of the island, but the coastal plains are a little bit more steeper compared to the northern plains. Then you reach the high areas, which are the volcanic areas of Indonesia, not Indonesia, but of Java. Then you ascend towards the hills and plateaus, towards the north now. You come to the coastal plains, which are wide and also fertile for agriculture and different land uses. And finally, you come to the coastal margins of the northern part of the island. So if we look at a map here showing us the island Java, the cross-section that you can see from your booklet is one that is taken from this area here across to that area. So we start off with the the Indian Ocean to the south of the island Java, the Java Sea to the north. We find the mountains. First of all, we start off at the lowland, the coastal areas, but we note that the coastal areas in this particular section are steeper. Then we come to the high mountain areas, and then to the northern part of the island, we are coming down to the hills and plateaus before we come to the alluvial lowlands, which are wide and flat. And the cross-section in our book is one that is taken from this point here to that point. Okay, looking at the island generally and the landforms, we note there on that particular island of Java, the yellow colors with the stroke represent the hills and plateaus. So we have on that island, there are hills and plateaus. You could also recognize that the hills and plateaus are what follows from the young folded mountains. So right across the island from west to east, the island of Java runs the folded mountains. Then you come to the blue areas here, and the blue area on the map represents the alluvial lowlands of the country, not of the country, but of the island Java. So look at that map. That map generally shows us the main landforms of that particular island. Any questions on that map? Okay, don't forget that map is not showing us the whole of Indonesia. It is only now looking at that island that we are basing our case study on, which is Java. Okay, we also note that from other readings, we can find that there are a lot of volcanoes which are found generally in Indonesia, and on Java there is no exception. Evidence to tell us that there are volcanoes found on that particular island. The first one will be, if we look at the plate boundaries, you can note that the Pacific plate boundary, it also runs through Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, through the Philippines, up to Japan, to Alaska, and etc., and coming back down through the American continent. It also covers areas of Indonesia. So therefore, that is one evidence to tell us that definitely the country also is volcanic. There are volcanoes. Besides that, on the island of Java itself, you can also see a map here showing us volcanic rocks. And if there are volcanic rocks, there is evidence also to tell us that volcanic or volcanoes are present. So right along the center of the island of Java, there is evidence of volcanic rocks. The importance of volcanoes on this particular area also contributes to the fertility of the soil. And it is through the fertility of the soil that the different land uses are actually evident, and also they thrive on that particular island. Okay, let's look at a little bit on the background in terms of the physical background of the island of Java. Again, you might want to do your note-taking to go with that information. Okay, it reads, from the information here, it says the topographic structure of Java may be seen in the accompanying diagram. Okay, the first one I've already explained to you, showing us the three main landforms on that island. We have the young folded mountains in green, the yellow color represents the hills and plateaus, and the blue color showing us the lowland areas. There is also evidence of limestone plateaus or platforms on the south of the island, and the limestone platforms, they actually rise sharply from the depths of the Indian Ocean, and they also form narrow coastal plains with relatively dry surface. So from the south, definitely there is also evidence of limestone platforms which rise from the Indian Ocean. Because of the fact that there is evidence of limestone in the southern part of that particular island, there is also, but drainage system definitely would have to be one whereby where rivers are actually flowing on the surface, they will tend to disappear quickly. Because from what we have already covered on chemical weathering, where we have limestone rocks, when it rains, water will not actually stay on the surface because through the process of solution, the water then gets to seep through the limestone and then underground. And because of the fact that there are limestone platforms in the southern part, there is absence of a lot of surface drainage. But that is not to say that there are no rivers in the southern part. There are some rivers, but most of that area where there is limestone, there is absence of surface drainage. Towards the east of that island, so we are going to the east now. East is on the side, the west here. Okay, towards the east of that island, there is a long season of relatively low rainfall when the coast is in the rain shadow area of the north air or of the northerly airstream, and relatively dry southeasterly winds which come from Australia. Okay, note, we were looking at climate, and generally we also found out that the climate of Indonesia is equatorial, tropical, equatorial, whereby there is a lot of rain, temperatures are high and consistent right throughout, very little temperature range. The winds are very important when we are dealing with climate of a particular area. The winds that blow around Indonesia, we are not going to look at, but we'll concentrate mainly on the winds that are blowing around this particular area. Note there, two air masses which contribute to bringing rain and also dry season to this particular island. First of all, the northerly airstream, which blows from November to February. And then there is also the southeast trade winds, which blow from March to August. So if we have to put in an arrow to indicate the north or the northerly airstream, our arrow should be placed from the north down towards the island. If we have to place in the southeast trade winds, then it will be blowing from this direction towards the southern part of the island. Okay, continues on to looking at the structure of Java, and it says that the medial ranges, that means those mountain ranges in the middle shown by the green color, they are folded sediments, rifted and hosted to produce intermontane basins with slightly higher slopes to the north. The intermontane valley are hemmed in by volcanoes. And when we look at the cross-section from our booklet, you should be able to find the intermontane valleys. They're actually hemmed in by valleys or volcanoes, sorry. And those volcanoes then, they contribute to fertile soils actually being found around those intermontane basins or the valleys. And because we also mentioned that there are volcanoes found in Indonesia generally, on that particular island, on Java, there are definitely active volcanoes which are still actively sending out steam, gas, pyroclastic materials, and etc. And there are also some volcanoes which are dormant that are found on this particular island. On this particular island, the highest mountain in Indonesia is not actually located or found. The highest mountain in Indonesia is found on Irian Jaya. But on that particular island, Java, there are definitely 15 active volcanoes on that particular island. Okay, now over to the land use. Having a fair idea now on generally the landforms on this particular island, let's look at the different land use and how people might have used the land in order for them to grow crops and also practice agriculture or farming. This cross-section you will also find in your book. That cross-section shows us generally the physical landform from the south to the north, as already explained. The Indian Ocean to the south, the Java Sea to the north. We have the coastal plains, which are narrow and irregular. We have the volcanic areas, which are also the highest point within the island, going from the south to the north. Then we have the hills and the plateaus in this area here. And then finally we come to the coastal plains, which are wide and very fertile. Then the coastal region towards the Java Sea. The vertical land use then. When we talk about land use, we're looking at the main activities that people actually perform or practice on that particular landform or on the island of Java. From the fold mountains and volcanic areas right at the top, there could be some form of farming that takes place. And if you look at the information from your booklet, this time making reference to the second cross-sectional diagram, you will see there that there is intensive use of the lower slopes and valleys, mainly for rice, rubber, vegetables, tea, and coffee. So in the valleys of the fold mountains and volcanoes and the lower slopes in this region here, rice is actually grown, rubber is grown, vegetables, tea, and coffee are actually grown. They all make up the main land use in this particular area. Moving towards the north then, the next area is the hill or the hills and the plateaus. And the main land use then will be lumbering, especially for teak. What do we mean by lumbering? What could be another term that we can use instead of lumbering? Have you heard about logging? Logging? Okay. Teak is a name of a tree. So here, lumbering or logging is actually common, especially where the hills and the plateaus are. That is not to say that this is the only activity that takes place on that particular area. No. We're looking at the dominant land use in those different sections or the different land areas in Java. Okay, we move further down, this time towards the alluvial lowlands. The alluvial lowlands is actually represented by this line here to this point here. There are a couple of things that take place on the alluvial lowlands towards the north of the island of Java. Here we're looking at rubber, which is also grown, palm oil and cocoa around this section or area here. Then we have sugar or sugarcane and tobacco that grows around this section here. And then finally, closer to the coastal areas, we have coconuts and rice again being grown. Where the sea is, obviously, it will have to be coastal fishing. So look at that particular cross-section. It gives us a good idea of the different land use on Java. Okay, I'm going to give you time now, and the time that you will be allocated will be mainly to make note of the two cross-sectional diagrams into your exercise book. And the first one will have to be the one on the build-up of the land, Java, from the south to the north. And the second diagram will be the one on land use. I'll give you about 10 minutes, and the 10 minutes will be mainly for you to make note of the diagrams into your exercise book. Okay, class, we have come to the end of our 10 minutes, so if you have not completed the construction, you will be required to complete the construction for your homework. And with that information, that will also bring us to the end of our lesson. If you could stand up now, please. Okay, to the pilot teachers, our keyword for lesson 142 is Sawah. Good afternoon, and thank you, students.